harassing people on Twitter. That is basically the job of our commander-in-chief, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, or at least that's what he thinks it is. And he harasses people all day long on Twitter. The Fed rate over a fairly short period of time should be reduced by at least 100 basis points, with perhaps some quantitative easing as well. If that happened, our economy would be even better, and the world economy would be greatly and quickly enhanced. Good for everyone.
This brings to mind two shipwrecks. One, the Poseidon Adventure, and the other, the Titanic. On the Poseidon Adventure, they had to realize that the ship had flipped over and was upside down before they could escape. And then with the Titanic, you have these negative interest rates, and so the economy is sinking. But if you remember the Titanic film, or, based on the Titanic sinking, the front of the boat, the bow, started to head down into the ocean. The tail, not the bow, but the tail, okay, it flips up.
Yeah.
So those are the people who buy these negative rate bonds. They have the sense that their value of their equity, of their bond equity, is going up as the Titanic, that is the U.S. economy, points down to the bottom of the ocean. Then when it achieves a perpendicular on the horizon there, then the entire thing sinks. So Trump is, we are about 5 to 6 degrees away from perpendicular, and Trump is calling for more of a faster sinking. He wants the U.S. Economy to sink faster, and and I thought when he came into office he had some brains, but it turns out he is completely out of his mind.
So this is the end game of any fiat system, I think. Alan Greenspan this past week said the U.S. dollar can go negative, our treasury bonds can go negative. However, will that destroy the U.S. dollar as a global reserve currency? So Europe going negative has kind of beggared thy neighbor, what Trump is responding to, I think, when he sees them being able to cut rates to negative. And in terms of that, Titanic, people at the top of the part that's not underwater yet, they think everything looks fine and is hunky-dory and they're dry, right?
Right. So something like 94% of all the bonds, sovereign bonds that are yielding positive rates of return, have a positive yield, are the U.S. Treasury.
And U.S. corporate debt. Even corporate debt in Europe is negative.
94% of bonds that have a positive yield are U.S. bonds.
Yes.
So that would be just a few degrees from perpendicular. So
Yeah.
I think the U.S. will go to negative interest rates.
Yeah.
And I think that will be when the entire global economy zips right down to the bottom of the ocean. And, gold and, of course, Bitcoin will skyrocket. So without any market to sell their bonds, the path of least resistance is to keep buying bonds, particularly since they're being given essentially free money. If you can borrow for nothing and your interest rate is 0 or less than 0, it's not a market where you have to buy from a seller. You're just printing gains out of thin air, effectively. So this market is so strange because there's no market for a sale. There's only markets for a vertical ascent. And hence the prices are going negative. The yields are going negative, right? So this is the Poseidon Adventure mixed with the Titanic in one colossal sinking of the global economy right now. We've got Donald Trump starring with the ghost of Paul Newman on the bridge of the Titanic, watching as they engineer a colossal failure of the global economy, and without the benefit of owning any gold. Less than 1% of investable assets around the world, and there's 100 trillion, own gold.
Well, the bond black hole is getting larger and scarier, with a third of the global market now negative. The quantum of negative yield debt doubled to 14 trillion in the first half of 2019. Its growth now appears to be hitting warp speed.
Getting back to the Titanic, they hit the iceberg And, you know, it wasn't, I've seen, there's a brilliant video on this online that has all 2 hours and 40 minutes of this hit the iceberg and the sinking of the Titanic redone in real time. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. This is how you can understand the economy. So they hit the iceberg and they're taking on water for 2 hours. You know, it took 2 hours before the actual sinking began in earnest. And, you know, this is where we are. That's what a negative interest rate is. In 2008, the global economy hit the iceberg. We had a credit freeze. The global economy died. It's been this stinking Epstein-like corpse since 2008. And the central banks keep pumping in the cash, but the market takes that free cash and they buy bonds to the point where the yields are negative. So that's the capsizing of the boat. And now we're almost vertical, and we're almost ready to hit right down to the bottom of the ocean, where all the gold is.
Again, to mix all our metaphors, we have passed the event horizon, and apparently, according to physicists, once you pass that event horizon, there's no going back. You're going to be turned into spaghetti and thrown through that black hole. What lies on the other side? I don't know. Perhaps it's all that gold at the bottom of the ocean, and that will rescue us.